many of you had a fabulous Easter? Yes, yes. I want to bring that up because Easter is something that needs to stay with us. A lot of times we get to Easter, we're like, I'm done with that. That's so last week. But there's a life, there's a vibrancy, there is a victory that we need to continue to live with on the regular. And so I hope that you had a good Easter, but we're moving now because when God does something in our life, He continues to call us out, sometimes into difficult situations, sometimes into arenas that we're going to make the greatest impact. And so we need to be ready for what God is doing. And so with that in mind, we're going into a series right now in Jonah, the book of Jonah. Now, Jonah is an Old Testament book. He's considered one of the minor prophets, not because they disrespected him, not because they didn't value what he was saying, just because he just spoke a lot less than some of the what they call the major prophets. And this book that is there in Jonah, we're just going to take some time. It is a simple, really 4-chapter book. And we're going to spend a month on this. And so we're going to dive into it and just kind of experience what it is, because in the midst of this, we want to grow in obedience. That's what the whole theme is, growing obedience, because a lot of times we wish we was either obedient, I'm either obedient or not. You know, some of you are parents, and you know your kids are not either obedient or not. They go back and forth all the time. And see, we as followers of God go back and forth all the time. We wish that we were obedient all the time, but we need to grow in obedience and not just expect unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And so that's why we're looking into the book of Jonah. But it starts out, as we're looking into it, we're just going to look at the first 3 verses today. Now, I know some of you are getting excited going, oh, good, this is going to be a short message. And that's cool. But just hold on. Because sometimes a lot can be said in 3 verses. But I want us to really look into it, because when we start out the book of Jonah, it really sets the stage for what is yet to come. And so it starts out with this idea, this prevailing thought that I have when I read the beginning of the book of Jonah is that we all have opportunities, but will we be obedient? All of us, day by day, have opportunities that we need to take. Definitely weekly and monthly, God is stirring something in our life. And He's saying, are you going to follow what I've called you to do? Or are you going to go and do your own thing? And a lot of times we're like, I'm just doing my own thing. If I can check the mark and say I was obedient once out of every, 6 times He calls, or maybe every 10 times He calls, isn't that enough? Because I can sit there and look back and go, but I did it then. But see, we need to have this cultivated expectation that when we have the opportunity, when God stirs in our heart, we have to be obedient. It says in the beginning of this book, in Jonah 1:1, it just says a simple little verse that a lot of times I just blaze through that because I'm like, okay, get me to something that's meaty, something that's meaningful. But it says this, now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai. Now, this is important if we understand the book, because we need to understand that this is a common phrase when it was talking about the prophets of God. When it was talking about the people that were commissioned, they had a mission that's like, I am going to speak to my people, and I'm going to use you as a prophet to speak truth to the people. Now, this sets Jonah apart right there. The word of the Lord came to Jonah. And so right at that point, they say, he has been set apart for something. And so you see this building expectancy that Jonah has an opportunity. Is he going to be obedient? And see, we don't know where this was at in the journey. You only see Jonah only a couple other times in Scripture, very briefly. But this moment is his moment. This book is his book. And so he's like, am I going to be faithful to the God that calls me? Am I going to be faithful to the one that speaks out my name? He says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai. And see, this son of Amittai was very specific. So we know that this was an individual person. And this is why we know, because a lot of times people say, well, there's so much sensationalism in the book of Jonah that you're like, is it really a real story, or is it just an allegory or just something that we're supposed to learn from? but why would it spell out this specific person? And so there's a specificity with it, but there's also a generality to it. Because really, the whole of the book is not just about what Jonah is called to say, but it's all about what Jonah does. And so we need to think this out. And so many scholars would say that this is like a mirror for the people of Israel. This is like a mirror for the people of God. This is like a mirror for you and I. That when we read the book of Jonah, we're supposed to take it with this idea that, am I responding the way Jonah's responding, or am I responding the way I'm supposed to be responding? Because at this point, the man of God doesn't always do the right thing. So I want to encourage you today, because some of you walked in here today and you're like, I haven't been doing the right thing. I haven't been obedient. I haven't been following the right thing. And so you can allow the enemy to pile shame, but God's saying, hey, stay there until the end of the book. Stay there to the end of the book, because will he be obedient? Because he calls him out, and this mirror that points out, you have opportunity. What are you going to do with your opportunity? Are you going to be faithful, or are you going to be obedient? See, another thing that we see in this is that Jonah knew the voice of the one that was speaking. We don't know how he comes about. It doesn't say a big booming voice. It doesn't say he had a dream about it. It just said the word of the Lord came to Jonah. It was probably that still small voice, but whatever it was, we know that Jonah recognized it. He doesn't respond with, wait a second, who's talking to me? What's happening right now? I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. It says the word of the Lord came to Jonah, and immediately he knew who was talking to him. Here's the beautiful thing that I want us to understand. If we're going to use this as a reflective piece in our lives, that there is a God that loves you, that's created you, that's speaking to you on the regular. Some of you, even in this moment, have heard the voice of the God, even through everything that's been going on. Somewhere in this moment this morning, God has stirred something in your heart, and he's stirring you into some action that he wants you to take. Are you going to be obedient? Because the word of the Lord, some of you are like, I don't know that I know the voice of the Lord. But the more that we listen, the more that we tune it in, and the more responsive we have to be. See, Jonah knew the one that was speaking. Jesus, when he speaks of himself in John 10:27, he's talking about his followers. He says this, my sheep hear my voice. He says, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them. And it says what? They follow me. That there is a response that needs to take place when God speaks. God doesn't just speak so that we can be intrigued, like, wow, that was an interesting thought. And a lot of times our spiritual journey is like, oh, I read the Bible, and that was some interesting thoughts. It really made me perplexed and wonder. No, the reality of when God speaks, the creator of this universe, the one that's created you, knows exactly how he's wired you to live. He speaks into your life. Why? Because he wants to maximize this moment that you have. And for him, it is a moment. And we might think that this is a lifetime, but he says, in this moment, are you going to be obedient and do what I've called you to do? So Jonah all of a sudden realized, wait a second, there's a God that's speaking to me. I've heard this voice before. I now have a choice. And so in Jonah 1:2, it says this to Jonah. It says, the voice of the Lord came to him, and it says, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. And all of a sudden the task was clear. The man of God heard the voice of God, knew what he was supposed to do. And at this moment, there's this crucial time. Am I going to do it? See, a lot of times we just think and go, of course. When God speaks, we listen and we're obedient. But unfortunately, we're a lot more like Jonah than we are like we should be. Because some of you know the story, but we're going to get into it. He knew that voice. It was a hard, hard lesson. In fact, at this point, you got to think that Nineveh, he was calling him to Nineveh, and that wasn't even the people of God. He says he could have made excuses like, I'm a prophet for the people of God. I'm an Israelite. Just send me to my own people. And he says, go to Nineveh. Now, where was Nineveh? This was the capital city of the Assyrians. Now, the Assyrians had taken over the known world at this time. They were the people in power. They were oppressing others, and so they were not liked. And he says, here, man of God, I want you to go to Assyria and minister to them. Here's the thing. Sometimes we hear the voice of God, but sometimes we don't like what he says. And so the question is this: what happens when we don't like the direction? Some of you have heard the voice of God, and you're just not doing it. I want to encourage you today. Let's start growing in obedience. Because, once again, obedience isn't either there or not there. It's a step that we walk into. And when we walk into it, we see the next step. So we walk into it, we see the next step. And growth by growth, and he expands our opportunities. He expands what he's wiring us to do. What happens when we don't like the journey? See, Jonah, once again, who's Jonah? He's the man of God. This is how he responds in the beginning of the book. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. That's a bad statement right there. You don't want that one written about you. But unfortunately, many times it's been written about each one of us. But when he received this message, he got up, ignored it completely, and did what he wanted to do. That's the story of my life way too often. Or he went in a position that was a little more comfortable, had a little bit better message, it was a little bit easier to do, and he walked in that, and he tried to convince God, can't this work? That's not the option. It's either you walk in obedience to what the Lord calls you to do, or by definition, you're walking in disobedience. So he rose, flee from Tarshish, and he didn't even mind. He understood he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. And he went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. Twice it says that powerful, convicting, difficult statement. You're not just running, you're not just being disobedient, you are actually leaving the presence of the Lord. At least in your heart, being cold. You're like, but I know God is everywhere. He is. But a lot of times we try to tell ourselves, if I get out of here, he's just going to stop talking to me. And sometimes that's many of our ploy. We're like, hey, I'm so mature. But when it comes to God talking to me, I'm like, la, 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 la. I don't know what you're saying. La, la, I don't hear anything. Because we don't like what we hear. And we can't respond that way. Jonah, he gets up and says, oh my gosh, I'm going to run. And so he was supposed to go to Nineveh. Now here's something we need to understand. That where he was, if he still was in Amittai, where he was from, he was about 500 miles. Now they don't travel that just in a day's time. They don't just hop on a plane and get over, to where he needed to go. It would have taken a long period of time to get there. And so he could have just said, that's way too far. I can't make it. But not only does he not go in the direction he's supposed to go, he goes down to Joppa and wants to sail off to Tarshish. Now, these names of these towns shouldn't really matter to us, except for the fact that if you look on a map, we see Nineveh was up and to the right of where he was at, looking at the map, and really, Tarshish was down and to the left. And see, he might have said, well, it was 500 miles there. He was going on a ship all the way into Spain, and it was a lot further away than Nineveh. Sometimes the choices that we make think like, oh, I'm going to convince God. God, you can use me in this space. I'd rather go here. Just because we don't like the direction. And really it comes down to obedience. And so in many ways, he thought he was fleeing the presence of the Lord. He thought he was fleeing the fact that God will stop talking eventually. Now, there's another man of God that is spoken in Psalm 139. Now, David, He was a man of God, after God's own heart, it says. But he had done some things where he had tried in his journey to run away from what God had prepared him for. And it didn't end up well for him, but he had turned back around and he found himself in the space. And he's like, this is the right spot. This is where I'm at. And then he got to the spot where he wrote Psalm 139. And this is where it says, where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, which is the place of the death, we know that you're a risen God. If I make myself there, you're there. He says, if I take on the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, your right hand shall hold me. He says, no matter where I go, you show up and you're there. But I still have to decide, am I going to be obedient or am I going to do my own thing? See, this is what all of us have to decide. We have a decision to make. And this is one thing that I like in that story, in the third verse. It says, so he paid the fare. He paid the fare. He made an investment, but it was an investment in disobedience. In the same way, we can pay the fare and make an investment in obedience. And either way, often in what we pay for, we get more than what we pay for. What am I saying there? I'm saying if we make an investment in disobedience, we make that payment, we get more than we bargained for. The story as Jonah unfolds the rest of this, we're going to talk about in the next couple weeks, he gets more than he bargained for. He thought that he was just making a payment to Tarshish. He was taking a whole circular route. But see, in the same way, when we make an investment in obedience, we get more than we bargained for. The blessings of God continue to fill us. It might not be a comfortable space. It might not be what we originally set out to do, but we can be very clear that when we follow the plan and the path of God, that he is going to take us in a place that fulfills us in ways we've never even understood before. So why do we run? Why do we run? But the question that I have for us, are we ready for what we're paying for? If you're going to get more one way or the other, you're going to get more from the disobedience, you're going to get more in the obedience. Are you ready for what you're paying for? Because we're always doling it out. Every day, every week, when God's calling out our name and we hear that still small voice and it says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go share that message with your neighbor. Oh, I couldn't do that today. I want you to go do this. I want you to do this simple little thing. No, I can't do this. Once again, it's a growing obedience. When we step into the small, he opens up the bigger. And when we step into the bigger, all of a sudden the obedience gets a little bit more extreme. Because why? We've already shown that we can be obedient to a certain level. But is there a limit to our obedience? Is there a limit that we say, I was already obedient. Did you see me back there, God? I was pretty good. And he says, but this is the step in front of you. That was the step for then. This is the step for now. Are you ready for what you're paying for? That's what I want us to think about today. But as we wrap this message, I have to be honest and I have to tell you what's going on. The reason why we're stepping into this is because God has made it very clear, and that voice that I've heard before has called me on. He's called me to take another church in another state. In late June, I'm going to be moving to Wisconsin, because that's where God's called me to go. And I want to be clear. It's the same voice that I heard 24 years ago when he told me to move from Southern California to Sacramento to plant this church. I've spent some time and I'm trying to tell him, God, I can really work this out for you. Let me tell you what I need to do. And he says, are you willing to be obedient, or are you going to be disobedient? We have a choice to make. See, I know for many in this room, some of you that you're new here, I'm sorry. You showed up today, you're like, whatever, dude. Beat it. See ya. But for me and Kelly, my wife, my son in the back there, this is a hard day. We love this church. I've tried to convince God, thank you so much. I've tried to convince God, no, I can do it. Let's do this. And he's made it very clear. That's okay. You're either going to be obedient, you're going to be disobedient. And I came to the place, I'm like, I'm not one to sit in disobedience. I don't want to pay that fare. I can't afford that cost. I have to do and to go where God calls me to go. So we made this decision. It is a new opportunity. It's a great opportunity. I'm just going to be honest with you. But that doesn't make it any easier for us. And so in the midst of this, I know that there's going to be a challenge for myself, and maybe it's just for myself, and it's just you can help me to process and to grieve. But we're going to open up our homes on Tuesday evenings for the next 4 weeks and just it's not going to be a study. It's not going to be a group. Get involved in groups. I want you to, because really the church is going to get stronger the more you tie into one another. But we're going to open up our home and just have some connect time where we can just talk. Maybe share stories of what God has done, what God is still doing, what we expect from God, just to help us process together. Because when we go through difficult things, it's better when we process together. But we also want to celebrate. We want to celebrate the ways God has met us in powerful, wonderful ways. When I sit here and I think about what God has done, I sit there and I go, thank you, God, for this past 24 years that I have been able to see exceedingly more than all that I could ask or imagine. I have seen his grace move in powerful ways. And I'm still believing he's going to do something good. In fact, that's what I want us as well to realize, that God is still doing something great here at the Crossing Church. It's not going to stop. When I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh God, but there's such a good season ahead. And he says, yeah, you're right. It's just not for you to experience. I'm like, you're mean. But that's okay. Because God is faithful. There's still something good, something great, something powerful, something transformational that's going to happen. Because there's two things that I know that I am very, very convinced of, and I need you to hear this, church. One, I have never been more confident in the staff and the leadership of this church. No time in the history of this church have I been more confident in the staff and the leadership than right now in this moment. In fact, that was my issue 2 months ago. I was sitting here walking, praying through the chairs like I normally do. The music team's up here. They're rocking it like they do and everything. And I'm like, I'm hearing all the good stuff. The kids had just come back from retreat and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so many great things are happening right now. I can't leave right now. And he says, because there's so much good happening, you can. And I'm like, all right, I get it. I get it. He's positioned the people there that are going to carry it to the next level. Our leadership, our board is fabulous. They've already been looking for an interim pastor who's going to see through the interim season. I just want you to know that, so that they can position the church to launch into its next phase. And I believe that God is going to do a thing. But that was the first thing. I've never been more confident in the staff and the leadership of this church. But second thing is this: I have never been more convinced of God's faithfulness, provision, and preparation. We talk about staff and leadership. I see some other people around here that have walked in just the last few months, he's had an infusion of people into this church. And I think that's God preparing it for great things ahead. You might be one of these people that's very new, and you're like, I'm not even bought into you. And that's good. Because you're going to be one of the core people that helps this church move forward. He is positioning the Crossing for great things. Question that I have for us in this is, what is he calling you to do here? We all have a role. The God of creation speaks to every single person that he creates. I want you to take some time this week and process, God, what is it you're expecting of me in this season? What do you want me to do? Because then it obviously comes the question, will you be obedient? Still want to say, before we take some time and pray, what you pay gets expanded in your results. Obedience pays off. Let's pray together. God, we thank you today that you are a God that loves your people. You're a God that loves the church. God, I thank you so much for what you've done in this church. I thank you for the way this church has impacted so many lives. Because, God, I know that that is just a springboard and a precursor for what is still to come. So, God, I pray that we will continue to be obedient to your call. We'll be obedient to your direction. That we will expect good things because you are a faithful God. God, I pray this week the people here or listening online, that they will take some time, shut off all the busyness, all of the noise in this world, so they can listen to the God that's created them. Help us, Lord, to hear your voice. God, I pray for those that are hearing that voice maybe for the first time right now, and it's just beckoning them to come into a relationship with you. I pray that they will be obedient and respond and say, okay, Jesus, I choose to walk in the path you've created me for. I choose to allow you to come into my life, to fill me with forgiveness and life and hope, so you can lead me into the next stage of where you want me to go. God, help us. Help us to always grow in obedience. Help us to be faithful with this step so we can take on the next one. We trust you. We turn to you. We choose to believe in you more and more each step. In Jesus' powerful name we